All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everybody out there for watching, for listening, however you consume the show. Appreciate you guys very, very much. We are live right now here at Sonny Red's, 1841 Abbott Road, literally just down the street from Highmark Stadium, and I am joined by two very special guests, first-timers at Sonny Red's. To my far left, Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports. In my middle, WGR 550, Nate Geary. What's going on, dudes? How you doing, man?
Well, I got to first say that this is like some of my favorite things in the world, talking about the Bills, talking about the NFL draft, and eating, and then talking about wings. You throw in my family and golf, and we have pretty much a perfect night for me. We don't have those two things, but the three others, fantastic. The wings were great. The pizza, very good as well.
I feel like I could have had a camera rolling and mic'd you guys up. You guys had your own little podcast.
We did.
You should have had that rolling, because it was at the very least could have been some good B-roll for you.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, great to be here as always. This is my first time here, as with Chris, both of our first times here. I just tweeted they've entered the top 5 in wings for me personally. I don't know who it's knocked down. I just know that it might now be tied for someone in my top 5. Yeah, like they were fantastic wings.
They're really consistent too, and you guys are both wing people, man. You go to a lot of spots. You go to a lot of places, and you can get wings, and they can be really good. And then you get really high on them, and then you go back the next time, and it's like maybe there's a different cook, and they don't taste nothing like the same. What I like about this place, for better or for worse, is it's really consistent.
That's huge.
And before we get in, by the way, we're also going to talking plenty of Buffalo Bills stuff, draft stuff. That's why primarily I got you guys here. But you guys were, and I'm not even exaggerating here, quite literally among the very first people to try their brand new homemade blue cheese. Now, let me preface this. I am not qualified to talk about blue cheese.
No, you're not.
I'm not a blue cheese
Nate
person.
is.
I don't like ranch. I don't like blue cheese. I don't like any of that. But you guys both enjoy blue cheese, especially Nate's homemade blue cheese.
Second only to Adolph's. But
Yeah.
Adolph's is just like, it's just different. It's that sour cream base. It's just it's borderline not blue cheese. It's like it's just like there's not that mayo-y, which I don't love mayo, but I love blue cheese. Really good. Here's the thing too I'll say about these. In terms of a hot wing, hot sauce, they're the first wing I've had that's a hot wing that has gotten me like, okay, 9/11 still always at the top for me, but like that hot wing got as close to 9/11 wings as I've ever had.
Wow.
Really flavorful, not too hot, but you definitely feel like you're eating a hot wing. The sauce retention was there, not too saucy, but not the sauce dripping off, and really crispy.
You can tell he's a draft guy.
Yeah.
Sauce retention.
I mean,
that's a draft.
I made up like a Mel Kiper-esque phrase. It's not real. It's only in my head. But whenever I need to analyze wings, which works for the show, I say sauce retention. It has to have the sauce stick to the wing and not fall off, where there's like a puddle of sauce in the bottom of the plate.
The RAS score on these wings are through the roof. Through the roof.
Before we jump into some football talk here, let's talk about two, because again, we're here at Sonny Red's. This is an awesome place. I love it. But this also isn't a Sonny Red's infomercial either. There are other great wing spots.
Absolutely. We're so lucky.
You mentioned Adolph's. Just obviously a great town to go out for wings. When you get out, Chris,
Yep.
You got out. You're out this way plenty now.
Yep.
Nate's lived here or in the South Towns. What are a couple of your favorite other spots?
Well, Barbell to me is still with. I do believe that a wing place, in order to be considered a legitimate elite level wing spot, you have to have a good medium. It's not only about the specialties. I think the specialties matter. So to me, Barbell's mediums, medium hots, and their obvious Cajun honey butter barbecue are tremendous. The one in Clarence North that I normally go to, fantastic every time. And we talked about it. We agreed. Beltline Brewery in the city, it's a brewery, but the wings are tremendous there. The everything dressed or the 716 all dressed, really, really good. So those are two of my favorites. Also like Adolph's a lot. I know a lot of people think they're overrated. I think Gabriel's Gate, because of the size of the wing, they're maybe the biggest wings that you can get in the area, are when I've been there, have always been really good.
You know, if I'm in the city, I'd rather go to sidelines myself than Gamesgate. But I'll say I consider myself very lucky being in the First Ward corridor because you have Adolphs, you have Beltline, and
Gene McCarthy's are good
I was
too.
just going to say,
Gene
nobody talks
McCarthy's.
about Mean Genes, and I think people should talk more about Mean Genes. You know, they're what is it, like the Sully, or is it the is it the Sully sauce?
Sully sauce
wings?
in the South
Sully
Buffalo,
style?
in
Very,
that
very good.
First Ward.
I consider myself very lucky to live. I would consider myself sort of in Wing Alley, down in the First Ward. So, yeah, you know, listen, next time you're in town, Saucy Boy is the wing flavor at Beltline that I think
Saucy Boy
is. So it's
to my
there. He won't like this. It's their 716 sauce with a little bit of blue cheese in the sauce,
mixed in,
and then
that's
topped
great.
with Parmesan cheese.
Okay.
Have mercy.
All right, Saucy
Have mercy.
Beltline, by the way, brewery-wise, far and away the best wings in Buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to
If it's not a standard wing joint, in terms of brewery food, Brightsmith has not the wings, but incredible food. I would consider them the best non-traditional wing spot you can get.
And now, with both you guys being your first time here at Sonny Red's, it was no accident that I got wings just medium and hot. Like there's flavors. Here.
I'm sure there is.
There's lots of gimmick wings.
Okay.
But to me, that's not how you evaluate.
No, I totally
A
agree.
place for wings.
Yeah, I totally
that's why
agree.
Traditional, medium, or hot. All right, let's dive into some football talk here before we get into the draft. Well, maybe it's related to the draft. I don't know. I want to get your thoughts. I'll start with you, Chris. The James Cook situation.
Yeah.
Now look, content creators, media, fans, we all have narratives. We need narratives to kind of get us through at least until free agency, and then of course, obviously now with it being just a week or so before the draft. But this James Cook situation has kind of dominated the narrative on the radio, podcast,
For sure.
TV. What's your take on the situation right now? We know what James Cook wants. I mean, he's told you what he wants. Brandon Beane was upfront at the owners' meetings when he spoke. It doesn't feel like he's getting an extension anytime soon, but also there's been reports he's not going anywhere for this year. What's your take right now on what's going on with James Cook? And also, do you feel like the situation with him will have any effect, if at all, with this upcoming draft?
Great question. To me, it is really hard to read because I think more than anything else, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, the Bills front office, as we've seen this offseason, they want to draft and retain, and they're serious about doing that. They like to do it before the price goes up for a lot of these players, and it's been a smart way to keep some of the homegrown talent in Buffalo. Because that hasn't happened yet, and then you couple that with the fact of they just drafted Ray Davis last year. They have a history of, from the second round to the fourth round, throwing a dart at the running back position. They love Ty Johnson, who they just brought in and ended up being a really good player for them. He was even better last season. It's almost like Brandon Beane would, in a vacuum, yes, he would love to keep James Cook, but he is not afraid to spend even a second-round pick. You know, he went Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, James Cook, Ray Davis in a span of 4 years. So, to me, I would say right now, reading it, it feels like if I had to bet, James Cook will not be getting the $16, $17 million deal per season that he ultimately wants. And maybe we will see they have a bunch of those picks from selection 109 to 206. Maybe they throw another dart at the running back spot to kind of gain more leverage in these contract talks with James Cook.
What do you think, Nate?
So, you know, I'm guilty, but I think we should just find better stuff to talk about. It's just tough this time of year. There's not a lot to talk about. They signed everybody. Who wants to talk about Terrell Bernard and his great contract, or Christian Bedford? There's nothing else to talk about. I don't think they'll take a running back in this draft. I don't think they can. They don't.
There's not a lot of room in that running back room.
You're not carrying four, and Ty Johnson's here. He was signed to a deal. He's here. He's not going anywhere.
And they should
love him.
Yeah.
You could ask the question, how much do they love Ray Davis? But you would basically, if you don't believe Ray Davis is the running back of the future, we'll talk about wide receiver and Keon Coleman, and Chris and I are kind of on the same wavelength on what that future could look like. But if they aren't completely sold on Ray Davis, which they've spent a fourth-round flyer on him, if he ends up being a cut-down guy or a guy that they try to sneak through the practice squad this year, wouldn't surprise me at all. I doubt he would make it through waivers, but if they think that there's a higher ceiling player early in the fourth, I mean, this draft is absolutely stockpiled with change of pace, maybe not feature backs outside of the top 2 or 3, but like you could get a player in the fourth round. I just, to me, it's going to depend on what they get taken care of in the first couple of rounds, what positions they go after, how much can they get on the defensive side of the ball. They have 2 more years, if they want, of control on the James Cook situation. Yeah. And listen, do I think that they're going to hold him hostage and franchise tag? This team has used their franchise tag one time and then traded the player. So if they use the franchise tag, it's to allow themselves to keep leverage, maybe not against the player, but just to have the asset to potentially trade. So I think for me, he's not being traded this year. I don't think that there is a world where teams are trading quality assets for running backs. It just
in a class
happen.
That is so deep.
Correct. So James Cook is doing what I think any running back in today's NFL should probably do, which is I'm going to get out a year ahead of this. I'm going to let it be known where I think I am. Listen, could he get $15 million on the market? Maybe. I don't think he will. I think it's more than likely that James Cook next year, the Bills say, you've earned the chance. We're not going to franchise you. You've earned the right. Go out and give it to you. We have our number in mind. If you have a number, come back to us if we're willing to match it.
I agree.
Almost exactly how the Saquon Barkley situation played out. And I don't want to say I want to use the exact same ideology as Joe Shane did when he said, we have a $40 million quarterback. We're not paying him to turn around to hand the ball off to a $25 million running back. But when you have Josh Allen, I get it, how good James Cook was, how explosive. He was their biggest and most consistent big play threat.
He was.
I don't think it's even a topic worth talking about because we're not going to get anywhere. He's not going to hold out.
Right.
He's going to play this season. He's probably going to have another great year, and that'll be that.
Couple things about what you guys were just talking about right now. When it comes to Ray Davis, I think he was tested once last year. James Cook missed one game.
And Ray Davis went for over 100 yards.
He played against
the
scrimmage. Jets. Yep, Monday Night Football. He had 152 yards from scrimmage. Yep. So I feel like he answered the bell. That probably gives them some confidence in them. When it comes to James Cook, look, I'm not a guy who's talking about sources and inside information. But what I will tell you is this. I have talked to, I'll say, multiple players who play for the team right now and another person with the organization when it comes to James Cook. He loves being a Buffalo Bill. He likes playing in Buffalo. He loves being here. He wants to get paid. He said he's standing on business. This is about money. This isn't about him, not wanting to be here or anything like that. And I think that's important because I think during this process, there's a lot of fans out there who think that James Cook doesn't want to be here. He wants to go play. He wants to go to Florida. He wants to go to Texas or play for Dallas, something like that. It's not true. Everything I've heard is he loves being in Buffalo and he wants to play for the Buffalo Bills. He loves his teammates. His teammates love him. Look at the finale last year. They put him into the game in the third quarter. We had nothing to gain except a personal achievement.
And they did it for him.
And they did it for him. That's how the team feels about him. Now, when it comes to the draft, though, Chris, you said this. If you draft a guy, let's say they use a 4th-round pick on a running back, doesn't he have to be a special teams guy? Doesn't he have to have special teams ability? Because you can't count on Ray Davis getting cut and going to waiver or making it through waivers. They're not cutting Ty. They're not cutting James Cook. So if you're not trading James Cook and you draft a guy, you pretty much have to put him on your roster. If he's not playing special teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think lean more to what Nate said, that I don't know if they will actually draft a running back just because of the numbers game.
Right.
Unless it's, to get specific, Jaden Blue from Texas, who's a smaller speedster that they think he can maybe be in the competition to return kicks, return punts, like you're saying, play on special teams, or he's a bigger bodied guy that they feel like can make some tackles on special teams, because otherwise there's just not the numbers in the 53-man roster to have yet another running back. I will say, though, for as much as you're totally right that James Cook was the second best option offensively for the Bills last season, even though Khalil Shakir had a great year. Maybe this is the draft guy in me, but if James Cook wasn't on the roster, like say he holds out or whatever, which won't happen, but let's just say he's not on the roster, say even next year, 26, and they draft someone else, if the offensive line is good and Josh Allen is the quarterback, they can get enough productivity from the running game where, I mean, will that guy necessarily set the team rushing touchdown record? Probably not, but they can get enough efficiency on the ground to be completely fine on offense.
It's partially why I don't think teams are going to look at him and say he's a $15, $17, $18 back, because he has had one big year. And, you can use that for him, against him, whatever the argument you want to make. He had 4 touchdowns coming into last season.
Yeah.
So a little bit is he's a piece of an offense that is very good, that's led by the quarterback. If he goes to Tennessee, if he goes to, Miami, or he goes to the Giants, or is he having 16 touchdowns? Is he getting the third lightest, 5-man boxes in the league like he did last year? Absolutely not. And I think it's the same thing. This is not to take anything away from Saquon Barkley, who is the best running back in football. But Saquon is not having almost a 2,000-yard season in one of the most historic seasons ever if he's playing in New York behind a bad offensive line and behind Tommy DeVito throwing the football. So to me, you have a guy that sees some of the lightest boxes in the league. You have a guy who can contribute in the pass game, and you have a guy that isn't asked to be a 3-down back. He stays fresh. So to me, his biggest threat is, I would think other teams view James Cook as a perfect off, sort of the second back,
yes,
the change of pace back. But no one's paying a change of pace back anything. So I think if it were me, and I think it's what Brandon Beane's going to bet on, is the market is going to tell him and dictate what his value is. You can tell us what you think you're worth, but ultimately the market dictates.
And I wonder one thing that just popped into my head. Coming off this fantastic season for James Cook, you said the one breakout. The chances that he has that same season in 25, I don't want to say it's 0% chance, but it's relatively low to have 16 touchdowns and be as efficient. So the momentum for him going into free agency, now a year older, now 200 plus touches more on his career, he won't have as much leverage to say, I want $15 million. I want 17 million now because the price has gone up. So I think that is also factoring in, like Pat's saying too. There's still 2 more years of him technically being cost controlled. He's not going anywhere. I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and the powers that be at One Bills Drive understand he had the most leverage right now. And I think that's why he came out with it.
Yes. 100%.
Which
100%.
All the power to him. I don't blame him for that. But I don't think the Bills should do it or ultimately
if I was James Cook's agent, I would have him play the exact same way.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you guys said. The only thing that gets under my skin a little bit when it comes to mainly the narrative of why he's not worth anything close to that. And maybe he is, the camera's going out, but it's still recording, so don't worry about that. Anyway, so the narrative that I don't like when it comes to what he's worth and what he's not worth is the playing time thing, that he's only playing half the snaps. Mm-hmm. I look at it from a perspective that also it keeps him fresher. You know what I mean?
That's great. That's a big part of it.
I want to talk about wide receivers next. All right. I'm going to fix this camera here while you guys are talking. I saw a mock draft where Luther Burden III.
Evan Silva.
Let's talk about this.
I want to talk about
this.
Go ahead, Nate. I had no interest, or not. I shouldn't say that. It's not that I didn't have interest in a wide receiver. I didn't think it was in play until I heard this, and now it got me thinking a little bit. Start with you, Nate. Let me get your thoughts on it.
It's interesting.
And you said it came from Evan Silva, who has a very good mock draft track record, if that's a thing.
He has a very, every year he's in the top 5 in terms of percentage of draft picks that he's gotten
accuracy.
Right. He is one of the more accurate mockers on the market. So,
and that's a way different pick. Bills receiver in round 1 is obscure.
It's not only is it obscure, but if I think Luther Burden is an obscure name for the pick at 30. So you've seen Matthew Golden. Listen, in my opinion, if Matthew Golden falls to 30, the Bills really have to take a hard, long look. And it's not to me because I love him as a prospect. I don't really think his ceiling is even a true number 1 wide. By the way, I don't think there is outside of, Travis Hunter.
Sure.
A true boundary number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I'm not a huge Ted McMillan fan myself. I think he, a lot like Keon Coleman, doesn't have that true elite separation skill. Mm-hmm. Great, 50-50 ball guy. He has a solid, he's got an NFL route tree, but to me, he is not a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. So I don't think Matthew Golden is. I don't think Luther Burden is. But what I do think a Luther Burden or a to me, Golden is a true speed threat on the outside.
They need that.
And to me too, with Golden is, I think if teams want to say, or evaluators want to look at him and say, well, the 40 time, you don't see that on film. I see it.
Okay.
I mean,
I
saw it on film. If that's going to be his detractor and it's going to push him down the board, so be it. To me, Burden's an interesting name in that I think a lot of people, almost like the Jahdae Barron from Texas, where everyone's like, he probably fits as a slot defender in the NFL. Evan Silva has him going, I think, 5th overall to Jacksonville as a boundary. So I think there are some contradicting ideas about some of the fits of some of these players in the draft. Is he a slot guy? Is Luther Burden a slot receiver, or can he play boundary in the NFL? To me, we were talking about this off camera. Burden was a guy last year where Missouri basically had no pieces on that offense. It was, let's get him the ball.
They had no plan.
No, it was, let's just get him the ball. And what's the easiest way? How is the easiest way to get a wide receiver in college football the ball? You put him in the slot. You have him running jet sweeps. You have him just do everything you can. You want to get him 12 to 15 touches a game. And it almost ended up being an evaluating tool against Luther Burden. I think he's absolutely the guy that can play on the boundary, can play inside. He's a little bit more, to me, a juiced up version of Shakir, a little more versatility. So would I hate the pick? No. I think there would be a lot of people wondering what, to me, I didn't see the rest of Silva's mock draft. To me, my question is, where did Amos go? And I'm pretty sure he went one pick before. He went at 29.
So there you go. So that would obviously have to be a situation where, like you said earlier, I think in that mock, a bunch of D tackles are gone.
Tons
a lot
of D tackles
corners are gone.
Grant, Harmon, Nolan, those guys are all gone. And then, you look and say, we need to take best player available, because that to me is the only scenario that I would walk away Thursday night. Listen, Jeremy will get on the show on Friday morning, and he'll be beeping the wide receiver train horn. I'm not saying that I would hate it, but I would need to know. And frankly, it would have to be three things happen. A, the run on defensive tackles. B, the run on corners. And C, no one will trade up. And you can't get out of 30. You can't move back.
For a team maybe to move up to pick a quarterback or something.
You can move back to 38. You can move back to 33, 34, almost like they did last year.
Yeah.
Where you're getting
the third rounder. They don't have it. Again.
And you and I were talking too. Like, I would really like to see the Bills, maybe less about who they take and where. I would really like them to get a 4th pick inside the top 75. They've got 3 picks in the 6th round. They shouldn't use any of them. To me, if you can walk away with 4 picks in the top 75 in this draft, Pat, I think you walk away with 4 starting caliber
players.
As
a Super Bowl contending team, that is rare.
Yes.
Because usually that's the rebuilding teams that have a glut of early picks. A lot of teams, the Minnesota Vikings have really loaded up this offseason. They won 14 games last year. They have 4 picks in the whole draft.
Yeah.
So to have 4 in the top 75 would be a huge boon. Just looking at the numbers and how many rolls at the table you'd want to get for a team like the Bills.
Let me ask you this question. Forget who the receiver is specifically.
Okay.
Let's just say it's a receiver. And the
in
Bills
round 1.
take them 30, 56, 62, all the way, let's just say up to 75, okay? Any of those picks, it's a wide receiver. Let's look at the current roster as it stands. Keon Coleman, a 2nd-round pick last year. He's just in year 2 of his deal. Khalil Shakir just signed an extension. Josh Palmer, they just signed him a 3-year deal. 2 of those years, he's locked in here. Curtis Samuel's here for 2 more years. The Bills could get out of his contract after this year. And not happening this year. They would lose money by cutting him. Post June 1st, tomorrow, doesn't matter. Those are their first 4 receivers right now. If they were to take a pick pretty high on a receiver right now, what does that tell you about the other receivers that are in tow right now?
Well, we talked about this off the air. We can kind of go back and forth here, Nate. It would say a lot. I think probably the most about Keon Coleman. But very quickly, and you can dive deeper on that than me, but I think in general, we're not that far removed, but in early October, when now different wide receiver group where there was a real thought of like the Bills don't have good enough receivers.
Yeah.
Like when balls were bouncing off Keon Coleman's head and Mac Hollins was trying to find deep balls against the Texans.
Brandon B didn't think they had good enough receivers after the Houston game.
Yeah, exactly. And he traded for Amari Cooper on his last legs, and he might not even play this season. So even though the season ended with all of the accolades, over 500 points, 30 touchdowns on the ground, 30 through the air, everything, getting to the AFC title game, going toe for toe with the Chiefs in Arrowhead again. I don't think the Bills are like, hey, we are complete. I mean, you just went through it, Pat, and you're right. Like the room, like we said, at running back, at wide receiver is pretty loaded in terms of how many bodies they have. Yeah. But I'm of the belief that they're not a team that should be like, hey, we're set at wide receiver. We cannot make any upgrades to the group that we have, especially with concerns about Keon Coleman. And I have those concerns, and I wouldn't be surprised after the lack of separation, the maybe game day or during the week preparation from Keon Coleman. I bet the Bills have some of those concerns too.
And I'll say this is, I think it was Matt Collar retweeted this thing about, and forgive me, I don't even know if I was alive. I was alive, but I don't really remember when Chris Carter, who was the number 2 wide receiver in Minnesota.
Randy Moss.
Randy Moss. The year they drafted Randy Moss, they had Chris Carter and somebody else.
Jake Reed.
Okay, Jake Reed. C-Trap knows, I don't. They drafted Randy Moss, having a Hall of Famer and another really good number 2 receiver. To me, it's a position nowadays. Receivers are coming out more ready to walk into an NFL offense than they ever have before. Like last year, Khalil Shakir turning into this version of Khalil Shakir was, if we were sitting here 1 year ago, it was a projection that he would be really good. True. He was good. He turned out to be really good. And not only towards the end of the season, not only was he good at everything you expect him to be good at, he started to add the vertical element to his game, which I think is going to be the thing that takes him almost to another level this year. To me, I like Josh Palmer a lot. I think he'll be a nice piece, but I think he's Matt Collins' replacement.
Yep. If
you draft a Luther Burden, if you draft a Matthew Golden, if you draft one of those guys, my question is, where does Keon Coleman then fit? I asked Eric at home this the other day. He was on, I think, on the morning show, and I asked him, I've said, today, if you had to rework your draft board with Keon Coleman in this class, where would you have him going? And he said he wouldn't have him any higher than he went last year. Mm-hmm. And
that's not a good sign going into year 2.
No, it's not.
For a player, yeah.
Knowing what he looks like in the NFL, and you still would not change your thoughts about where he would go in this draft if he was available. Says and at home is a guy that does this a lot, right? I mean, he's
long-time draft guy, follows the entire league. Yeah, he's good. Really good.
I'll say this. I thought that I think Matt Harmon said it right. He's a big slot.
If they won't move him there, then
they won't move him.
It's a little concerning.
Now, Matt Collins played big slot a bunch last year, and I thought he was their best vertical threat from the slot. Could that be a situation where you see more Keon Coleman in the slot? I think it's the only way that Keon Coleman turns into an everyday sort of listen, if they're running out right now 11 personnel, he's not out there.
Yeah, probably not.
Is he out there in 10? He might be out there in a 10 personnel situation. But like, to me, what we should all ask ourselves, and what I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and all these guys are asking themselves internally is, we need one of Kincaid or Coleman to step up in a big way next year.
Absolutely.
Are any of you guys putting your money on Coleman being that guy?
No,
I don't think they are.
Didn't they draft Dalton Kincaid to be that quote-unquote big slot?
They did.
That big version of
They
Cole
did.
Beasley?
Yeah.
So
I remember hearing when they drafted him.
And there, to me, that's also why they're a little bit of a flaw in drafting Coleman last year, is there was a little bit too much crossover with what Coleman's skill set is and what he's projected to be. They're insistent that he's a boundary guy. I don't think he is. The smartest people in the industry that follow wide receivers, that chart every single snap, don't think he is. So we'll see. But I'm telling you right now, if there's a draft pick of a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, a guy I am enamored with is Trey Harris.
Ole Miss. Yeah.
I think he would have a hard time making the 53. And if that's the case, we're also going to talk about defensive tackle here, I'm sure. It could also be Dwayne Casey.
Carter.
I'm sorry.
Carter, yeah.
Not the old Toronto Raptors head coach. Dwayne Carter. If you have your first and third round picks as fringe roster players 1 year after drafting them, you really better hope Cole Bishop turns into, Ed Reed or something, because they're going to look back at that draft and say, it's a huge miss in a Super Bowl window. You can't afford big misses in the drafts when you're in a Super Bowl window.
I'd also like to add this as well, too. It's one thing if Chris Trapasso or Nate Geary or myself, if we're saying we have concerns with Keon Coleman, and we do, and I think as we should. Brandon Beane has concerns about Keon
Sean
Coleman.
McDermott does too. He said as much.
Yeah, and they both did. They both talked about how they didn't like how he came back from his injury and that they expect a lot more.
And then they fired their strength and conditioning coach, who had been there for like 20 years. Yeah, they were frustrated by a couple of guys coming back, but him specifically coming back from injury.
One school I thought when it comes to receiver, I hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about, but if you think about it, it makes sense. Is even with the 4 they have right now, it's the NFL. Somebody's going to get hurt, and what happens when one of those guys go down? Samuel, Shakir, whoever it may be. What's your depth right now? Jalen Virgil, Shavers?
Not much.
Laviska Shenault, maybe.
I think we haven't talked about that because the last couple of years when there have been some injuries, they've all been on the defensive side. The Bills' offense has stayed significantly healthier than most teams. And think about it, if in the middle of the season, if the Bills are tracking toward to try to be the 1 seed, Shakir goes down with an ankle, he's out for 3 or 4 weeks. Then we're back to where we were after the Houston game, and everyone's saying, man, Josh Allen is unbelievable, but he just doesn't. Look what Joe Burrow has. Look what I'm sure the Chargers are going to reinvest at receiver.
God, I hope.
Yeah, that there will be other quarterbacks, top-tier quarterbacks. We saw, obviously, what the Chiefs have done. They're probably going to invest there, too. That I don't think the Bills want to get to that point where they're 1 injury away to their best receiver, which that would be the case for a lot of teams, but 1 injury away even from a Josh Palmer, now suddenly you don't have a deep threat. So you're right. What you're getting at, Pat, I think I totally agree with. It's the Brian Daboll adage from years ago. Keep the bullets in the chamber, especially Josh Allen is still in his 20s.
Yeah, I mean, you can't burn years of his prime. People are talking about wanting to trade James Cook. You don't need a receiver, defense. You gotta restock too as well. Yeah. I do want to get to the other side of the football here.
What, you mean the one that Bruce Nolan picked 7 players on last week?
7 consecutive players. People were losing their minds. He did not take a receiver. I think it might have been Tesla in the 6th round or late 5th round or something like that. 7 consecutive. I mean, you can make a sense. I started thinking that's crazy, but then I remembered 2006. The Bills. I don't remember.
Was that the Whitner draft?
Yeah. Whitner,
your guy, Whitner.
What a draft nerd, this guy. He goes,
Simpson.
The Whitner draft.
Co Simpson, round 2.
Ashton Yabouti, Co Simpson went round 4. So what they drafted Whitner. They traded Upper McCargo in late round 1.
Oh, you're right.
Ashton Yabouti was in round 3. Co Simpson was round 4.
You know who I am? I'm Co Simpson.
Yeah,
remember that
when he got arrested? And you're like, and the cop was like, who?
And the funniest shit is the throwaway pick was Kyle Williams.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Crazy.
But I remember I was blogging over at Fox Sports. And I remember at the time saying it was a transformative draft for the Bills. They revamped in 1 weekend.
Cargo was out in 3 years.
Entire defense. Yabouti was never much, and Co Simpson,
And he was the 3rd defensive lineman on that NC State line that was picked in the 1st round that year. I think
Mario Williams is 1.
Mario Williams, Manny Lawson. And I think the Bills, that scouting staff, obviously a completely different whole regime, but I think they were watching Mario Williams and Manny Lawson, oh, who's that guy? John McCargo. Yeah. And everyone's like, they traded up for the other NC State D tackle, and it ultimately did not happen. They went full defense, and it did not revamp their entire defense during the drought.
Let me give you guys a confession. I mean, I've made this very public and well known. When it comes to the draft, I know a handful of players. I learn more by watching you and reading your stuff, by listening to you guys. A lot of draft experts. That's how I learn. I watch some YouTube highlights. I don't know much about a lot of players. I don't try to pretend that I do either. But you can relate to this, at least anyway. There's one team that I do watch every single week, and that's Notre Dame. I watch those guys play 12,
so does Nate.
I hate that you hate the Yankees.
Because you guys could be totally aligned. Bills, Notre Dame, Yankees.
It's not that I hate the Yankees. It's that
you hate the Yankees.
If nuclear war started in the U.S., I would hope that it starts right in the Bronx. Yeah.
Come on, dude. I'm from the Bronx, man. But in all seriousness, I watch Notre Dame football, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of their players. Anyway, as compared to the others. I want to talk about their 2 guys in the secondary. Right? Both of them, to some extent, have been linked to the Bills.
Yeah.
Xavier Watts, big time. I see Xavier Watts go in a lot of mock drafts to the Buffalo Bills somewhere around 2, including mine that I did a couple days ago with Bruce Nolan. He took Xavier Watts. I think Anthony Prohaska might have taken him the week before as well. Anyway, he's pretty much a guarantee to go in round 2. Benjamin Morrison, a corner who is coming off a significant injury that cost him a lot of last year. I'm not really sure where he is in the process. It kind of feels like he's going to be a day 2 guy right now. Talk about those 2 guys. You're going to do it objectively. Don't cheat because I know you're a big Notre Dame fan.
Okay. So I have an idea here. I will give you a quick scouting report. Then I will step aside for the Notre Dame guy to give I watched every single snap the last 4 years.
Yes.
Xavier Watts, how I'll frame it for the Bills is he is very Billsy in what they have liked at the position. He did not test through the roof, but he plays fast because of his instincts. He reads route concepts very quickly. Former receiver. So that helps. 13 interceptions the past 2 years. That is no, pure luck happened to have 13 interceptions across 2 seasons. Benjamin Morrison, he was one of the first corners that I watched after Travis Hunter. I was blown away by his man coverage ability to stay in the hip pocket of a wide receiver. I don't know anything about the hip injury, where he's going to be. Is he going to be as explosive? Is it a big deal? Is it not? But on film, I think he is. If you plugged him into the Bills in the AFC title game, they probably win the game because his man coverage, to me, on film was spectacular.
Yeah.
What do you think about those 2 players?
And he's a great leader.
Just from watching them.
Benjamin Morris is a big-time leader.
I agree. I think is really disappointing him going down with the injury this year because on their national championship run, I thought Morrison could have been the difference for them
against Jeremiah Smith.
Against Jeremiah Smith, but not that I thought Smith went off against Notre Dame, but listen, with Morrison first is pre-injury. I think it's him and Will Johnson as the two true scheme versatile guys. Like, to me, Will Johnson is a shutdown number 1 quarter in the NFL and can play man. He can play zone. But I think nowadays it's so easy to just say he can play zone. He can play man. To me, Brandon Morrison can do it all, can play quarters, can play cover 2. He can come up and be physical. And it's not one of those guys that gets at the line of scrimmage just a press physical.
No.
But he beats you with technique. He has unbelievable ball skills. Again, I think you and I were stolen his last year in Notre Dame with the injury. Who is your comp for Watts? Do you have a comp? Because I do.
I have a wait. Keep talking.
I think you guys might like this comp. He reminds me a little of Jarris Bird.
Ooh. Who was not a crazy athlete.
Not a crazy athlete.
Instincts through the roof.
Instincts guy, deep third safety. Here's the thing about Watts, and this would be my only concern for the Bills because the Bills have what do we know they really like to do? They love to disguise coverage pre and post snap. They like to start with, Poyer in the box and have him drop and have Hyde come down. I don't believe that Watts in the NFL is the kind of guy that's going to have a lot of versatility. You're not going to want to expose him in the box as a defender, especially in the run game.
He's a center fielder.
He is serviceable, though. I don't want to over dramatize that. He's not a bad player. That's just not going to be a strength. Where he's going to make his money in the NFL as a deep third safety. And I wouldn't mind, because of how versatile Cole Bishop is, if your future is Xavier Watts and Cole Bishop, there is plenty of disguising you can do. Yeah. There is a ton you could do. And frankly, the Bills want to run more three safeties. That's why they signed Taylor Rapp last year. It wasn't just because, 2 years ago, I should say, it wasn't just because they needed a guy in waiting. That was true. But what they wanted to do, what they couldn't do because of the Micah Hyde injury, was see all 3 of them play, because Rapp can play that box. To me, if you get Xavier Watts this year and people say, well, what are you going to do? You got all these. I think you could run way more 3 safety looks. You could have Rapp or Bishop in the box and have a true deep third safety. So I think for me, I love both players. Obviously, I'm biased towards them, but I think they both really exhibit the kind of scheme versality, the kind of off the field stuff too. Both players, have you ever heard Xavier Watts' story?
That's big.
His story is unbelievable. His dad's paralyzed. He has an unbelievable, to me, they ooze Bills. But yeah, Jarris Bird, that's my comp.
Yeah. I kind of got Micah Hyde vibes a little bit when it comes to Watts. Just that center fielder, kind of like a ball hawk kind of guy. A deep safety. What was your thought?
So it was Julian Blackmon is my comp, which I know is not a big name, but coming out of Utah, he was that in those really good secondaries for Utah 3 and 4 years ago. He was mostly the free safety, playing sometimes as the deep middle, but mostly in a split safety look, making a ton of plays on the football deep, being that eraser. And we know it's true in the NFL today in general, but the Bills do not want and are very good at limiting the big plays. They don't want the big plays. They've been so good, even when they have moved on from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, not allowing the 20-plus yard gains. And that's where Xavier Watts can come in, and you let the bigger, more explosive and rangy Cole Bishop play a little bit closer to the line.
We're here live, Sonny Red's 1841 Abbott Road. Filling up here real nice. Nice crowd here on a Wednesday night. Back to Xavier Watts real quick. Let's just say, again, for the sake of discussion, let's say the Bills take him in round 2.
Okay,
right?
I can see that.
I feel like you're taking him in round 2. You're taking him to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Rapp and Bishop. Now, again, Bishop's a rookie in year 2 of his deal. Rapp's here for 2 more years. The Bills can get
One
out
more.
of his contract. No, he's got 2 more.
Does he have 2 more?
Yeah, but they could get out real easy.
Okay, because I thought he signed a 3-year.
It was a 1 year and then a
3-year.
And then
yeah.
It was first.
But anyway, my point, they could get out of it. Really easy. Are we looking at, if you were to take Xavier Watts, is he your free safety, and now you have Rapp competing against Bishop and Camp? And one thing I found interesting when I had Anthony Nebraska from Cover One on about a week or so ago is he said I like Taylor Rapp, I like Cole Bishop, I don't like Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop out there.
Agreed, Anthony. Well, Anthony's very smart, so he knows
he watches
his stuff.
a lot of film. He knows. Yeah.
I agree with him. I don't love them out there together.
No, agreed. I think they're both better closer to the line of scrimmage, and I think we're talking about depth at wide receiver, running back. Having Taylor Rapp on your team as a veteran that's a backup that occasionally you roll out there in 3 safety looks like you're mentioning, that's probably what they want. And post Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in their primes, they're rolling out DeMar Hamlin, a 6th-rounder, Cam Lewis, the one season where they both got injured. To have that position in Sean McDermott's defense that we know is vital, that's like the quarterback of the defense, and having legitimate depth, young players that would complement each other really well, along with DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp as your primary backups, you would be feeling really good about the safety position if you're Bobby Babich or Sean McDermott.
When it comes to corners, who do you like right now? Like, do you like somebody specifically at around 1 and 30? Do you like a guy a lot, like maybe at 56? Maybe you got to come up a little bit to get somebody like that, but somebody in that range, somebody you think could be a really good fit for this team.
I already raved about Ben Morrison, not just because you guys are 2 Fighting Irish fans, diehards, but I really love him on film. What everything Nate said, scheme versatile, so fluid and explosive, can just follow all that. There are a lot of other players, and it kind of aligns with, I don't know if the Bills will do this. We kind of got a glimpse in free agency. I think the Bills need to get more explosive. They need better big-time athletes in the cornerback room, at safety, at defensive end, in the middle. I think there are those players mostly in the 2nd round. Savon Revel from East Carolina would be the biggest, longest, and most athletic cornerback that Sean McDermott's ever had on this team, because even Trey White was not a freaky Marshawn Lattimore type athlete. I absolutely love him. He's coming off a torn ACL. It was in September. I don't know. I mean, at 22, you should be able to rebound from that.
I agree.
You would think, right? Darian Porter is another one that is
Iowa
State, even bigger and even longer. What's ironic is very similar measurements to James Bradbury, who's just visiting with the Bills today as we're recording this, who Brandon Beane was a part of the Panthers regime that drafted him.
I cannot remember a draft class at corner where you have such long athletic freaks.
Yeah.
There are more 6'2", 6'3" corners in this draft in the top 75. I don't like, who's the kid from Seattle?
Rick Woolen.
Woolen.
That's
Woolen was
who Porian's a lot like.
5th round pick. There is 4 of Woolens in this draft. They all could be top 40
Darian
picks.
Porter tested very, very close to him, and he ran 4.26, I think, and Porter ran like 4.31, 40-inch vertical. So I can't say that these are Billsy type players. The other would be Azarie Thomas from Florida State, who's like
him
almost 6'2", almost like
6'2",
190 pounds. He's 20 years old and already looked the part in the ACC of being able to make plays man and zone, decent tackler as well. You're right, Nate, especially on day 2, those 3 players that I outlined, and then you can throw in Ben Morrison as well. Big, long, freaky, explosive corners where I want to see Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich work with them and get the most out of their talent, as opposed to making Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson the best players that they could be, a 6th rounder or a 7th rounder and undrafted. I want to see them work with a Tariq Woolen type specimen at corner.
So let me say a couple of things here. You and I both agreed earlier when we were eating those delicious chicken wings.
The podcast before the podcast.
The precast. We both agreed. I'm sick and tired of this narrative that because Sean McDermott's been able to do it without great corners, that they should just keep doing it and invest in defensive line. I think it's nonsense. I think they've raised their floor with Dane Jackson. I like Jamarcus Ingram a lot. I like Cam Lewis a lot. These are great depth players.
You need them.
Yes.
The Bills have more of those players than a lot of other teams do. Yeah. But to me, the reason Benjamin Morrison makes so much sense is what move did they brought in as a senior defensive assistant Atlanta's defensive coordinator last year, and his name's escaping me right now. What is he known for? He's known for man in exotic blitzes. Yeah. What was the first guy that they went out and signed after they brought this guy in? Michael Hoyt, a guy that they can use as a chess piece, that can blitz, that can stand up, that can be in a 3 stance, can be in a 2-point, can play, from 1 to 7 to so to me, that was the first indicator of we're bringing this in guy for a more of a philosophical shift. They ran more man coverage last year than any other Sean McDermott team since he's been here in the NFL, since he's been a head coach in Buffalo. To me, Benford showed more as a man corner than I thought he could, to be honest.
Totally agree with that.
Way more than I thought he could. To me, finding a natural man corner is what they've been looking for. They went for it with Kyer Elam. He just was so... He can't play any zone. He has no feel for the game. Yeah. And I think that they decided to go for traits and man coverage. We think we can train him to be a good enough serviceable zone corner. They miscalculated big time on that. So for me, the guy I really like is the kid out of Kentucky, Hairston. He's a 4.31 or 4.28 guy. Super speed. Again, 6'1.5", 6'2", 195, 200 pounds. I'm good with Ravel. I'm good with Amos. He's similar.
Amos, yeah. He's
so
good
many
too.
of these longer, but to me, look for the guy who's got the true feel in man coverage. Again, not necessarily physical. This is not a press man team. They never will be. Even the man coverage they ran, they're not running press man.
And that was Elam. Elam was good beating you up at the line.
Correct.
But if you could get past him in press, it was done.
Good night. Yeah. So to me, don't look at the guy in this draft that's just a man press physical guy. Look for someone that A, is going to be serviceable tackler, B, provide high level zone ability, but C, is a true man corner, because I think that's the type of archetype they're really looking for.
100%.
We all learn from our mistakes while we try to anyway. Do you think Brandon Beane has in mind, you're going back to 2022, everybody knew they needed a corner.
It was telegraphed.
It was kind of telegraphed. Do you feel, though, with this draft being different, that they also have a big need right now at defensive tackle, too? That is not necessarily having to go out and get a corner. It could be an offensive tackle or even an edge just as easy.
Yeah, I think certainly defensive tackle is still a gigantic need. And that's not even just because Larry Ogunjobi is suspended for the first 6 games. Even if he were not suspended, I would still have considered it a pretty big need for this team. They need a bigger body next to Ed Oliver. Maybe you and I disagree on this. Maybe this will make for good TV, good podcasting. I don't necessarily think the guy needs to be 320 pounds. I would like to just see someone else who can disrupt the pocket, push the pocket, and be explosive. That's that word again, beyond Ed Oliver. Because Star Lotulelei didn't give you that. At times, Jordan Phillips did, and that was probably the best the defensive line was. Quentin Jefferson, not really. We didn't see really much of that from Dwayne Carter last season. I want to see someone beyond Ed Oliver who can get up the field in a key moment in the playoffs, down the stretch to secure the 1 seed. And there are a lot of those players in this class. You probably, though, like you're saying, have to pick them in round 1. And there could even be a run at defensive tackle before the Bills actually go on the clock at 30.
30th in DVOA against offenses in 11 personnel.
That's
last
bad.
year.
That's bad. Really bad.
They need to rethink. And I think Sean McDermott, credit to him and Bobby Babbitt.
They've evolved constantly.
And bringing in a new voice that has never been in the organization, that doesn't have experience with Sean McDermott, is another example of the growth and the willingness to expand. Because to me, they have always been light one gap penetrators. That is who they have identified as, and they have consistently, they have an anchor at edge. That's your Greg Rousseau. It's your Dwan Smoots.
Big body guy.
Keep going back. You're going to find
Lawson.
one.
They
Shaq
brought
Lawson,
back like 3
one
times.
guy that sits at the edge, who's not expected to be a double-digit sack guy. He is going to be one of your best run defenders, set the edge every single time. So that guy exists in this defense. That's never going to change. They re-signed Rousseau because of that. The other thing that they've really done is on the interior is they want these one-gap guys that can get up. Teams, and Ed Oliver has said it, teams target Ed Oliver, they target his aggressiveness, and they trap the shit out of him. They want him to come upfield because they run right behind him. So for me, this defense has lacked for years a true two-gap defender at one tech. And what does that mean? Whenever you say true, this is a guy that is forced, and you can do it 2 ways. You could just have a guy down there that's so big that they have to double team. I agree. That's not the guy I want.
You can get that guy in the 6th round.
I was going to say, you can get that guy in the 5th round. That's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, to me, Ken Grant is the ideal. There's probably one Ken Grant in this draft. There's not multiple guys.
Which makes me think he's not going to be there at 30.
I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be there at 30. I think it's a pipe dream for people that want him there. So for me, Ken Grant is the one guy that gives you plus level pass rush and penetration, but can do what I'm talking about. It would be that two-gap defender, be an anchor. So I think for me, they need to find a happy median. And I know a lot of people like Harmon a lot from Oregon. I don't think he's a fit. I think he's a 3-4 defensive end. But, Chris might disagree. I think he kind of agrees that he's more of a versatile player. He's more of a plus size at Oliver than he is a replacement for DeQuan Jones. So I think for me, and let me take over this podcast. I'll ask you a question right now, because I haven't had him on a show in a while. So
I'm just chilling anyway.
If you are sitting there at 30 and you need a starter at corner and maybe a plus level starter, but you could get away with knowing this draft has the depth at one tech, which position would you prioritize at 30, corner or defensive tackle?
So I've been on the defensive tackle train, but for what we are agreeing that they need is that true one tech and what you just outlined, you would have to go corner, because I think it's harder to get a plus level starter at corner than it would be to like later in the draft than to get. There are a bunch. I've watched 280 guys. There are a ton of 315 to 340 pound big bodies that have light feet that, wow, he's a dancing bear. How is he so athletic? Doesn't really generate a lot of pass rush. If that's what they want, and that's the one part of the philosophy along with that strong side edge rusher, that Sean McDermott's like, we need an anchor. We have smaller linebackers. We need to keep those linebackers clean. I would go corner first, and then maybe not even in round 2, address the bigger body defensive tackle later.
I'll say this too. It's going to sound crazy. They've never replaced Star Lotulelei. That was one of the first moves this organization made, was anchor defensive one tech. Now, was he a great player? No, and that the whole COVID sit out was weird. But one of their first moves was Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. The other one technique defensive tackle.
And they paid him a lot
of money. And then they really have never found that replacement.
I was going to ask you guys a question. You eliminated one of the 3. This is for both of you, too. Let's just say there's a scenario in the draft. There's a run on other DTs, a big run on edge rushers. A couple of receivers go. The Bills get in a situation, they're on the clock at 30, okay? You got Kenneth Grant, you got Hairston, you got Amos. All 3 of them happen to be there. You both kind of just outlined how you wouldn't take Grant probably in that situation.
I would take Grant.
Well, yes,
I would take Grant.
I was going to say, for as much as we just said, philosophically or from a 30,000-foot view, you would go, I can get a plus starter at corner that we really need, D-tackle later. But Kenneth Grant, because he is 345 and he plays to that size against the run, and at 21 years old can get up the field, which is what I think they need next at Oliver, it would probably be Kenneth Grant, because for as much as there's other body types like him in this class, there's not any of 330 plus with the upfield ability that he has.
I not only would take Kenneth Grant, I would not take the 12 minutes necessary. I would put it on a card and I would run up to the podium.
It's going to be midnight anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Right. And what I would probably do from there is I would try to get up from 56 somehow. You got a bunch of picks later
or 62, yeah.
And you go and you go get your Morrison or your Thomas or some corner like that, Porter like you talked about. We're winding down here at Sonny Red. By the way, shout out on the video side. Well over 1,200 people have been checked in on us live here tonight. We talked about a lot of players we don't like. I want you to give me a prospect or two. I'm not saying that you don't like, but somebody who might be getting a little more hype than you feel is warranted. That doesn't mean that you hate the prospect, that you don't think he's going to be any good, but somebody who you think might be getting a little more hype than
okay, so that's how you worded that was perfect, because these are not players that I hate. I just think the hype has gotten too much. If you guys disagree, again, we make for great audio. Jahdae Barron from Texas. And this is going to surprise you. Maybe not because you're a Notre Dame guy. Colston Loveland from Michigan. He is very similar to Noah Fant for me. And Noah Fant out of Iowa, another Big Ten school, tested absolutely through the roof. We never got to see Colston Loveland work out pre-draft, but you've seen it on the film. He's fast. He's going to separate. Noah Fant's problem in 2019, he was 20th pick in the draft that year, did not create much after the catch, had low missed tackle force rate. So does Colston Loveland. Noah Fant was also not a rebounder, contested catch, box you out type. Neither is Colston Loveland. His contested catch win rate was only 40% in his Michigan career.
Smith.
Jonnu Smith, maybe Darren Waller at his peak. Yeah. That was one of the comparisons, I think, from one of my colleagues. I think.
But you don't have him out there with 11 personnel or 10, he's not a blocker.
He's not a blocker yet. He's still young, so there is upside. I think seeing that he might be a top 20, top 15, top 10 pick, I think that's a little rich. I think he's a good player. The separation is great, but I wouldn't pick him that high. And Jahdae Barron is so unique to me in that was a quality player at Texas, then in his age 23 season with arms. Yeah, he's almost 24 with arms under 30 inches. And I'm getting into the nitty gritty of the draft stuff, but he has arms of a slot corner, but played 70% of his snaps on the perimeter last year, 29-inch arms on the perimeter. And you see it on film where he's about to close the window and can't quite get his hand in there. It's still completed. If you're Revel or you're Darian Porter with 33.5-inch arms, that's a pass breakup.
Every inch matters, Pat.
Every inch, size matters in terms of cornerbacks. And Jahdae Barron is not a great tackle. I'm just going to try to gloss over that. Size matters. Length matters when it comes to cornerbacks.
Don't let any woman tell you otherwise.
I hope my wife's not watching.
The last thing with Barron, and I think this would kind of disqualify him in a way from the Bills beyond the lack of length, and he broke out late. Not a good tackler. His tackle efficiency was one of the lowest in the class. So short arms, a little bit smaller. Yes, he tested well. One season of high-level production, and I watched 2 of his interceptions, and not every interception is a great, athletic play. 2 interceptions came on tips. One was in the SEC title game where the backup quarterback for Georgia was trying to throw the ball away, and it was like a fair catch. One was a really good play, and another was when against Texas earlier in the season, against Georgia, where a Georgia wide receiver ran into him, fell down, and the ball came right to him. So I've seen a lot of, he's a ball hawk, 5 interceptions. I don't really see that with Jahdae Barron. You're mentioning maybe in the top 5, top 10, top 15. Loveland and Barron, to me, solid players, but I wouldn't pick them in the first round.
I got 3. I'll touch briefly on my first one, Jackson Dart. It's a guy that's being talked about as a first-round guy. Even though I don't need to watch quarterbacks anymore, thankfully, I still find myself intrigued with this draft class because I think people are they're searching for one.
2022 all over again.
70% of his passes were either screens,
RPOs or go routes.
RPOs or go routes.
Yeah.
It does not translate to the league. So that'll be the only one I'll say is I'm not a huge fan of somebody moving up for him in the first round. I think he's a second or third round pick at best. The 2 guys in this first round that I just do not love, and I like Ken Grant more than I like his teammate. And I know everyone really likes him. He's a consensus top 10 pick, Mason Graham. Short arms. I think he was, to me, a little more of a product of having an unbelievable one tech next to him. I like Ken
fair.
Grant as a prospect more. Maybe I'm looking through it a little too much through the lens of the Bills, where if I had the choice between the two, I would rather have Ken Grant because I think that's a bigger need. I think he is going to be overdrafted because there is no true elite defensive tackle. Every class seemingly has one or two defensive tackles that are transcendent level.
Jalen Carter
right. It doesn't exist in this draft.
Yep.
So he's going to be that guy, and I don't think he'll be that in the NFL. My other guy, and this is not a fault of his own, Tyler Warren. You want to know the other tight end in this draft?
I can agree with this, too. I have him graded lower.
I don't know what he is in the NFL because I think in different ways, he's a lot like Dalton Kincaid, where I don't know that in the NFL, I think whoever drafts him as a tight end, because that's what he's going to play in the NFL, you're not going to get what Penn State got out of him. He's not going to run.
He was the entire offense.
Correct.
He had like 150 targets or
something. And if he was just a tight end in Penn State, he wouldn't be going in the top 15. I'm just going to tell you that right now. What makes him, I think, very unique is he was taking snaps at quarterback, at Wildcat and wide receiver and tight end and running back. And that's not going to happen at the next level. So I think for me, because of what he did so well in college, it just does not project out in the NFL game the same way. So to me, there's one team that I would love him to go to.
Jets.
I don't think it'll happen. No, not the Jets.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it sarcastically. Like
the one team I'd really like him to go to is Jacksonville, because I do think Jacksonville
would utilize him,
and I think that they could. And I think Liam Cohen could get creative with him a little bit. Otherwise, like if he goes to the Colts, that's where tight ends go to die. So if it's him or Lovin, like the other team I'd really love, it's not going to happen. Chargers.
Oh, that would be fun.
I would love him.
Because they need so many targets. Yeah.
And like him and McConkey together would be.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't feel like he's going to go into the 20s. He's going to be gone.
It's very odd to me that the conversation, almost consensus, is there's going to be two tight ends taken in the top 15 of this draft. Where I agree with Chris on Lovin as well. I don't think either of them are true. It just goes to show you about this draft. It is going to be the best of the best mock drafters. We're not going to have a guy with 20, 22, 24 picks right.
No way.
This is going to be the hardest draft we've seen. Last year, there was 2 or 3. The kid from Florida, the receiver, that guy, Ricky Pearsall. I did not have him as a first round. No one did. There wasn't a ton of Ricky Pearsalls in that draft last year. It was like, whoa, there's going to be
this
guys.
Year there will be.
There's going to be guys that people that draft guys that C-Trap and Rarely is going to be like, I had him as a 3rd round guy. It's going to go in the first round.
I'm fully prepared for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Two more quick things that we're going to get out of here at Sonny Red's. I want to spend 1 minute here talking about Sean Dolak, local kid from Buffalo. We've watched him play, or at least we know a lot about him. We've seen a lot of him on film, stuff like that. He didn't get invited to the Senior Bowl. He didn't get invited to the Combine. I've seen various projections. He could be a 5th, 6th rounder. Lots of projections that say he won't get drafted. Sometimes you think scouts just overanalyze things. I see a football player, man, and I saw I think it might have been the Athletic. Maybe they had a player comparison, and I was like, whoa, Tyler Matekovich. Like, is the kind of pro he could be. Like, he could become a special teams guy who plays. Anyway, do you see this kid being in the NFL next year? He may or may not get drafted, but
I think he gets drafted.
I think he gets drafted. And I was on with Brad Ryder, who's now doing radio out of Lockport again, which is great because Brad's awesome.
Yeah.
And early in the process, he's like, so do you think he's going to get drafted? Because is he like the color guy for UB, right? And I go, well, it all will depend on the pro day. He had a 35-inch vertical at the pro day and did not run 4.8 or 4.9 like a lot of people thought on film. He's pretty slow. And I don't think he necessarily plays to that level of explosiveness, but the numbers are the numbers. There were scouts at the UB Pro Day, and they're going to see 35.5-inch vertical with a first-team All-American that sheds blocks like a veteran, that made a ton of plays in coverage with his mind, and the zone ability that we're talking about with corner, tons of tackles, always around the football, doesn't miss a lot of those tackles. I'm good. That I think he's going to be drafted. My comparison for him is Chris Borland. Remember Chris Borland out of Wisconsin?
Yeah.
He retired early because of the concussions. He was worried. He ran like 4.7 or 4.8, but just was a football player, was picked by the 49ers, and in that kind of Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis transition period, Chris Borland looked like a stud who was transcending all of the traits. So I think Sean Dolak will be drafted on day 3. I have a draftable grade on him. I think I have like a late 4th, early 5th on him because everything that I think a lot of linebackers need to learn in the NFL, and we see a lot of the first rounders like the Kenneth Murrays and the Patrick Queens take a lot of time. Even Tremaine Edmonds take time to develop. Sean Dolak has those nuances down pat and was productive and was a first-team All-American because of them.
I can tell you that at the pro day, there weren't a lot of teams sending their best scouts to go watch.
There weren't a lot of
Sean Dolak.
GMs there, I bet. Yeah, no.
I can tell you that GMs called I forget who the head coach is.
Pete
Lembo.
Yeah.
Pete Lembo.
Yeah.
I can tell you, GMs after the pro day were reaching out to UB about getting more information. I heard that teams didn't even have draft profiles of him.
Yeah.
That
The film is fantastic. It
the
really
film's
is.
fantastic, but this is especially in the day of NIL. There's less and less attention being paid to the non-Power 4 conferences because there is now
Why would
an
you not
assumption.
just transfer to
Now
the
there
bigger
is an
school?
assumption that if you are good enough at the smaller school, you're going to get your
But he
chance.
got hurt in 23, so that's why he didn't
Right,
do it.
and then the coaching changed.
Yeah.
And I think that, I agree with Chris. He's going to get drafted. Listen, in the NFL, linebacker, it's a new age of linebackers. 215 10 years ago was unheard of.
Remember Keith Ellison?
Right.
And he was way too small.
Yeah.
Wow,
I remember
that's
that.
a
Today,
name. That's a name.
today
I
he
forgot
would
about
not
that
be.
name.
Right, and remember a couple years ago, Shaq Leonard was like,
Said I played,
212. What?
and he was an All-Pro linebacker.
Yes.
Yeah.
212. We were
At that
like,
size.
he can't play middle linebacker in the NFL. 212 can't happen. So it's a different age. I think the things he does very well, I think translates to the NFL very well. I think right away, if he could become, you mentioned Tyler Matakavich, if he could become an A+ level special teams player, he could play for 15 years in the NFL.
Yeah. Yep.
The thing that I think Sean Dolak will prove in the NFL is, I feel the same way about Jack Kaiser at Notre Dame. Got to get one more plug in there. That if they're given an opportunity because of injury, that they could start games in the NFL, maybe not be in not a guy that's going to, set the market for Sam linebackers or Mike linebackers, but can absolutely feel good about, hey, we lost, Matt Milano for the season. A Dorian Williams, now they don't have the foot speed. He doesn't have the foot speed, but he could be a Dorian Williams third guy up totally in the NFL for sure.
Yeah. Dude, he's a very hungry, grounded, hardworking kid, man.
Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Bills
No.
took a flyer on him.
It'd be really nice.
Especially because I know the Bills are looking at Chris Paul Jr.
Yeah.
They've been doing homework on linebackers. I would bet they take a linebacker.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And look, no disrespect to Joey Dreesen whatsoever. I'm so happy for Joe.
Me too.
Glad he's in the NFL. Coming out of school, Sean is a significantly better
Yeah.
player at college. than
What
Joe
will
is.
be interesting, that I'll just jump in quickly, they're like opposite profiles.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah,
admit,
yeah.
and I'll say this, I watched Andreessen after I saw his workout last year that his relative athletic score was like 9.3.
It was crazy. Yeah.
And his film, Andreessen's film, I was like, he seems like he doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's really fast when he's doing it. Dolak doesn't look crazy fast on film, but he's
Instincts.
always around the football.
Instincts.
And what your point about it being a new age, coverage.
It almost matters more than being a run stopper.
It does. It absolutely
really does.
There's the Jordan Brooks, who was a first rounder, insane athlete, didn't have any clue in coverage. Kenneth Murray, the Chargers traded up for him, insane, looked like DK Metcalf.
Should be a guy you think is good in coverage.
And
Terrible in coverage.
horrible in coverage. I think being cerebral and having route recognition skills, route concept that you can rapidly process those. Sean Dolak, and he is very good at shedding blocks because he is a little bit stockier.
Yeah.
So they're different profiles in that you watch it. It's like teach tape every single game that you watch with Sean Dolak. Maybe the athleticism isn't there, but because of that, I think the opposite reason, Joe Andreessen got picked or got on the Bills roster because of his athleticism. Dolak's going to make a team even if he's not picked because, again, the intangibles and the nuances are through the roof.
Once Derrick Henry is gone from this league, there are he is the last of a dying breed.
Good
There
call.
are,
He is.
there are speed. There's no more true downhill physical. I'm going to run you over backs. Those guys aren't playing running back anymore. There's no money in it. So for me, that's why this trend with linebackers, it's here to stay. It's not going. They're not reverting back. Teams aren't going to a turnaround and I formation and handing the ball off, dive, ISO. That doesn't happen anymore.
No
so
more
for
Brandon
me,
Spikes.
more right
No.
to me, more Andreessens and Dolacs will see opportunities in the NFL because of the instincts and their ability to cover.
Last question here. We're going to get out quick.
Yeah, I'll be quick.
Prediction. Well, I guess we'll call it a prediction. The draft next week. I want you to give me your most bold but still realistic Bills scenario. It could be the first
At 30?
round, second
Okay.
round.
Okay.
It could be they could trade up, down, trade for a player, trade a player, something over the course of this draft coming up next week.
Okay.
That's bold, the most bold that you can come up. That's also realistic.
Yes, I don't know how bold this is, but I'll add a little bold flair to it. I think similar to what happened in 2022, they will trade up a few slots and pick Trey Amos from Ole Miss. They will see. We don't really know about Ben Morrison's injury. We don't know about Rebel's injury. Are they going to be there early in round 2 that we can move up from 56? And they will be like, they'll see D tackles go off the board. Kenneth Grant, we agree, will probably not be there. I think whether it's to 28, 26, 25, 24, somewhere in that range, and pick Ole Miss cornerback Trey Amos.
Okay. Yeah, or Nate?
Oh, boy. I think from a bold take perspective, I'll go one semi-bold, one really bold. First one is I think that they end up trading out of the first and they don't have a first-round pick again.
Ooh, I would love that. Get more roles at the
33,
table.
34, get yourself a third-round pick, something like that, right? The other one is I think you can take this to the bank. They are going to take a quarterback in this draft.
Wait, 5th round maybe? Feel right about 5th?
Riley Leonard?
Earlier?
I don't think he's very good.
Okay.
But
I tried to get in another Notre Dame plug for you.
I mean, Riley Leonard.
Leonard.
I don't think he. I don't see it. I personally, but one of these guys, like somebody that's athletic, large, can run and throw the football. They haven't taken one since Jake Fromm. I don't think that they're in love. They do like Shane Bichelle quite a bit.
Okay.
He'll be back next year. He was injured, neck injury, missed the season. I think he probably would have been on the roster. I know Mike White's here. Mitch Trubisky's not.
No,
still
he's
ain't
not
a
moving
lot
the
of-
needle. Yeah. Actually, can I add one more little bold prediction? I think they're going to draft a tight end.
I also think that.
Because,
You know who I think?
Who? No.
Gotson. Syracuse.
Oh, yes. Aronde Gatson Jr.
Gatson.
That would make a lot of sense. And it feels like with Quentin Morris is not
He's
signed
not.
currently.
Is he a free agent still? Or
He's-
I think he signed somewhere.
Did he? He
don't
visited with the Lions. I don't know if he
I
signed.
love Q. I would
Yeah,
like to see them bring him back. but
I think that is a low key, whether it's, and I don't think it necessarily means just because it's low down the pecking order in terms of priority that it'll be their last selection.
Totally.
But if they love Aronde Gatson from Syracuse, former wide receiver turned tight end, if it's in the 4th round or one of their 5th round picks or one of their 6th rounders, I think because Kincaid, they're a little iffy on can he do it. Dawson Knox caught
misses time a ton.
and
Misses
Dawson
a lot of time.
and he caught 22 passes last year. They love him. He's a captain, all that. But I think tight end will actually be picked by the Bills in this draft.
I agree.
I got one small one.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Size. I don't know where they're picking with the first round. It could be 30 up, down. Their second pick will not be at 56. It's going to be before 56.
Oh, okay.
So
Move up
maybe
from
they-
56.
If it's 30, they're going to move up from 56. Maybe they trade back.
I think
and
it's
then
why
they-
it makes sense for them to move back from 30,
Agree.
get some more stuff so they
Agreed.
can move up from
Agreed.
56.
Agree.
Yeah,
I
good
think
call.
defensive tackle, corner, in some order is going to be their first 2 picks.
Trey Harris,
And
baby.
56, 50 at 56, the DTs you love, the corners you love, they may be gone. So I see them moving up from 56.
Okay, there's your bold predictions.
There's my bold predictions. And that's going to do it for this episode. One more time, big thank you. Sonny Reds here, 1841 Abbott Road.
Elite level wings.
Wait,
Elite.
I have one more bold prediction.
Go ahead.
I'm going to win the Bills Media Golf Tournament again this year.
I would like to be in
Again,
that this year.
I'm
That's
grinding. Just know. I hope Skursky's watching. I'm grinding.
I'm going
And,
to make sure.
and Skursky's, he's been doing more caddying lately than playing. He better get his game together. That's all I'm saying.
Trash talk at the end of the podcast. I love it.
That's how you got to do it. That's how you got to do it. Again, big thank you, Sonny Reds. Big thank you to first-timers, not on this show, but first-timers here at Sonny Reds. Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, Nate Geary, WGR 550. Thank you, everybody watching. Again, almost 1,400 people checking in on the video side. A lot of people will be listening to this tomorrow as well. Appreciate you guys very much. Be back with a brand new show tomorrow. Talk to you guys then.